I've always liked trains ever since, I don't know, I think it was probably Thomas the Tank Engine or something when I was a little kid. And I had always come out here when I was little, and I always said to myself, you know, I'm gonna do this someday. I wanna work on the big stuff.
I've always had a fascination with railroads. I mean, from the time I was really little, I've always just been kind of obsessed. And back in October, me and my wife came out here and took a train ride and actually rode in the cab of this locomotive. And talking to the engineer and brakeman, they talked me into filling out a volunteer application.
Oh, I've had interest in trains ever since I was a kid. We first wanted that Lionel train to run around the Christmas tree. And that was about in the 40s of last century.
This was probably my first experience with a full-size train when I was about 1 or 2 years old, I think. And I thought about volunteering, but just never really did. Just showed up one day and they put me to work.
Trains built United States. Prior to trains, there were 2 tracks and wagons pulled by horses. And that was your method to get around. Trains came into existence in the basically early 1800s. And trains are what established the West Coast, tie into the East Coast, north to the south, tied cities to cities. We're preserving American history by keeping everything rolling and running. And as one of our sayings is out here, without us, the volunteers, it's just rust. And this stuff would just rust and deteriorate. The tracks, the cars, and everything else, a lot of maintenance into it. And like nothing's very new out here. Everything is very old. The newest thing out here are the volunteers. And I'm one of the old ones. But it's hard to get younger volunteers out here because they didn't grow up with trains as kids. If people stopped volunteering, the railroad would shut down. And it would be a major impact, yes. Basically, Coopersville would be a little farming community, like a lot of other communities in West Michigan if it wasn't for the train. This railroad brings in people to Coopersville, and those people spend money in Coopersville.
What are you doing?
Changing fuel lines.
Why do you have to change the fuel lines?
Because they're 60-something years old and they're rock hard and they leak air. And on a diesel engine, you cannot get air in the fuel system. Like in this case, when I pulled the old fuel lines off, there was no fuel in them. All the fuel had leaked back to the tank, and that's why we've been having such a hard time starting this one.
This morning when I got in here, I had about 6 people. What can I do? And I know the talents of each one. I put them in that direction, and they were absolutely pleased because they were working in something that they could handle and enjoy doing. You take advantage of their abilities and you put them together, and some will learn something they've never done before. But all in all, the railroad gains for it.
I think you have to find people with a work ethic, and you have to find the people that don't expect to be paid. They have to know the only reward is, first of all, helping out with something like this, and second of all, I think they have to have a like for the railroad. They almost have to have an obsession.
K5 train hose. 1 down, 4 to go. I don't know if I'm going to take them all off now.
I think this thing's going to start really good now. Really, really good.
I'm going to do a test run. Fire in the hole. too.
There's, railroads are everywhere, but they're kind of people don't really talk about them unless something bad happens, like a wreck. Okay, as far as family history, back in 1901, my great-grandfather was I believe a fireman for the Lakeshore Michigan Southern on a passenger run on its way back to Niles from Chicago, and some kids had tampered with a switch and they ran through it and derailed the train, and he was killed. So, that's a big part of it there.
I've had a couple pretty close calls. We were coming into Marne on the other end of our line here and just uncoupled from the train, and we were moving the engine to the other side of the train, and a little girl and her mom were cutting through across the train between the caboose and the last car, and the girl fell off the caboose as we were coming towards them, and she landed on the rail in front of us, and it was within 15 feet or so, and we're going 10 miles an hour, and I don't know what I would have done had we hit her, because that would have been absolutely horrible, but thankfully the engineer with me that day was right on his toes and set it into emergency, and so we stopped in time, thankfully. So, but yeah, just stuff like that. I wish I had some more fun stories. I mean, there's a lot of fun times out here too, but there's a lot of wow, oh shit moment. Can I say that? Yeah, oh shit moments.
If you take the initiative and just grab a project and run with it, you can do a great job with it, spend all day working on one thing if you want, and then, it's done for the next 40 years maybe, and that's kind of nice. There are always a lot of kids that ride the train, and this being my first experience with a full-size train, it's kind of fun to be able to kind of give that same experience to kids who this is probably the only time they've ever actually ridden a train.
Kids at heart. Some of us just have more silver hair than others. But I think that the older the railroad gets and the lesser you see it out here, the more the younger ones are going to say, what is it? We want to become part of it. We only live once. And you can't say you're going to make it up when you're too old and too decrepit, so I'm doing it now.